Hey class, welcome back to Production Management. This is your Unit 6 lecture on the schedule and the process. So when we're talking about the schedule and the process, what we're really talking about is the production or the pre-production process. We'll talk about the actual show run of show, and post-production in our last lecture on opening night. As a production manager, developing the production schedule and facilitating the pre-production process is not just a function of your position, it's a primary function of your position. This is one of your biggest jobs. And sure, the goal of any production process is to open an on-time, on-budget, successful show, right? But I like to think that our goal as production managers is a much bigger task, and that's to bring together a collection of individual artists to collaborate in an active theater in a way that facilitates the talents of everybody involved and gives agency to each one of the artists that you're going to be working with. Before you start laying out your production schedule, your process, and figuring out what that's going to look like, it's really important to have a conversation with all of your primary team members, that being the director, the writer, the designers or producers, and perhaps managers, to understand what each of their individual styles are and each one of their needs are, to try to figure that out, to help better facilitate what they need. So you've got to bring a collection of individuals to work together, and the better you can understand them, the better you can understand their work, the better that you can help start to fit all the pieces together. How much pre-planning you do is completely up to you, but in my experience, unless it's taking so long that it's going to hold you up for something, there's really no substitute to careful planning. Your job, like a Boy Scouts, to be prepared. Here what we're even talking about is perhaps the pre-production process. Even before you get into the pre-production process, and having your schedule and everything running, and all of your meetings and all of your rehearsals and everything that we're going to talk about today, sitting down and really taking time to understand your team, to talk with them, to understand their needs before you start this planning process is really important in my book. The more work you do, the better and easier it's going to be on everybody. And the reason that I want to talk about really planning is because you're going to have a lot of people to plan, to schedule, to organize, and to help collaborate. I just picked this photo here because I had quite a large crew, and it looks like this show had people working on it from all ages. We have cast members there, we have crew members there. They're all very organized, and they have this nice photo where everybody's smiling. That's a picture of what a very organized show looks like. What we don't want to get into is a situation like I have in this image up here on the right, which is you're herding cats, right? And that without proper production management, without proper scheduling and pre-planning, your very nice organization of happy, friendly individuals who are all there ready to work together may hopefully not, but definitely the potential to erupt into something quite chaotic, as this guy here trying to manage 4 canes as he herds a bunch of angry, dirty cats. I put up this image of this wheel, of this nautical wheel here. I remember in the first lecture I told you guys that we would be coming back to this idea of the wheel, and of you as the production manager as the hub of that wheel, and all the different people that you've got to work with as the spokes. It's your job to keep these people together and organized. I'm not going to really get very specific about each individual team member's jobs, because we've done that in a previous lecture. Not to freak you out, but just to remind you, I just want to give you a list. I'm just going to read a list of all the different people and different artists that you potentially could be working with in a single production, who you'll be having to manage and schedule, and to help facilitate their ability to collaborate with each other to create a successful production. All right, so you're going to have your artistic staff, right? Your playwright, your director. If it's a musical, you'll probably have a musical director, a choreographer. You might have a fight choreographer. You're definitely going to have a stage manager. You're going to have a whole team of designers. You're going to have your scenic designer, your costume designers, your lighting designers, and your sound designers. You're going to have your primary production staff, your house manager who's going to manage all the front of house box office stuff for you. You'll have your technical director. You may have a props manager depending on the size of the show. You'll certainly have a master electrician who's going to take the ideas of the lighting designer and take their design and actually physically make that happen in the space. You'll have the sound engineer who will do the exact same thing with the design that your sound designer comes up with. And all of these people will have assistants or crew that works under them. Your master electrician is going to have a whole group of electricians that are going to hang and focus all your lights. Your technical director will have a crew of carpenters working for him or her to ensure that all your sets are built. That's just the people that you're going to be managing before the show starts. Once the show starts, you're going to have a whole nother group of people to include, and that mostly includes your run crews. You're probably going to have a sound or light board and operator, at least one, maybe two, maybe three. You might have a projectionist if you're using projections or film. If you have a lot of costume changes, you might have a wardrobe supervisor, a wardrobe crew. You might have deck hands or stage hands. Folks that are going to help move scenery on and off stage to help with costume changes. You might have that wardrobe crew. You might even have a spot operator if you're having spotlights. And then on top of all those people, you get actors who are awesome to work with, but are artists. Bringing their own things to the table. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them conflicting, some of them collaborate and complement each other in amazing, beautiful ways. Again, I don't want to scare you off by listing off all these people. I just wanted to highlight the number of people that you're going to have to manage as a production manager, and doing that to highlight how important, how very important it is for you to be prepared and for you to do as much pre-planning about your production rehearsal process as soon as you possibly can. Okay, so thank you for letting me blab on a bit about all the people you're going to be working with. But as you can see, being the central hub of this organized chaos, it's important to remember how big your task can be. So today I'm not going to give you a specific template for how to schedule and organize your pre-production process. I'll give you a few tips and suggestions about things I've learned along the way, and then I'll give you a general template, some general ideas for different parts of the process. But ultimately, the schedule for every show you do is unique. No two shows are the same. They each require their own unique production process. Your show may need 6 weeks. Your show may need 2. They're all going to be very different beasts. And discovering what the process that's going to work best for your show is a big part of the job in and of itself. As a playwright, I always say that in the writing process, discovering how I write each play is a huge part of how that play comes to life and discovery of what that play is. The pre-production process is very similar in that however you mold your process is going to develop the work that you ultimately come up with. So today, quickly, I'm going to run through just in order. I'm going to run through the new play production process, which you've talked about some already, auditions. I'll give you a template for a kind of generic tech schedule. I'll also give you a generic template for a kind of perfect world tech week schedule. We'll talk a little bit about photo and video calls, which I think are very important, especially when we start talking about marketing in our next lecture. And then finally, I will talk a little bit very quickly about rehearsal schedules. All right, the new play development and season selection process. So this is something we talked about quite extensively in our section, our very first or second lecture, I guess, on literary management. I wanted to add it in here. It's just to remember that whole new play, if you're working on a new show, that whole new play development process is going to come before everything that we're talking about now. In the best possible world, you really want to have your play script as tight and ready to go as possible before you start your official pre-production process, bringing in your designers and your directors and your actors. That's not always the case. A lot of times your playwright is going to need time to do some writing, some editing, some cutting of the play during the process. As a production manager, it's really up to your director to make that decision and their collaboration with the playwright on what that's going to look like and how it's going to affect the rehearsal process and rehearsal schedule. I do want to note that I think it's important as a production manager, and comes from me being as playwright as well, to put what we call a drop dead day into the rehearsal calendar. A drop dead day is a day after which the playwright will not make any more changes or cuts to the script. And again, this will depend on the playwright. It'll depend on the production. In some productions, I will be cutting the script, during tech and dress rehearsals. Though you have to have a very special relationship with your actors to do that. The idea of a drop dead day is that you want to have the script ready, so when the actors memorize the script and they get off book, that you're not making a lot of changes and interrupting their process once you get to that point. All right, so we're going to talk about auditions now, and the first thing I want to talk about is not doing auditions. So when you're casting your show, and again, this is going to directly go to your relationship with your director, but when you're casting your show, you can find actors, find performers in several different ways, several different means. And a lot of times I think that directors and production managers just really think of kind of the traditional acting audition process. We'll talk about shortly. But I just want to say that when you're hiring someone for a show to actor, not only are you looking for them to be a very talented person, not only are you looking for them to be the right fit for your show or the right fit for the character, not only are you looking for someone that's a good team player, but you're looking for someone who really has a track record of work, right? If you've never worked with someone, you're casting them, particularly in a lead role in your show, you are putting a lot of faith in their work ethic, in their ability to work well with others. And one of the best ways to do this is to not wait for actors to come out and find you, but for you to actually go out and start recruiting and finding actors. So how do you do this? The biggest thing is to go out and see plays, right? Go out and see shows. Look for actors. If you have a particular role in mind, get out in the theater community in which you're working and go out and recruit and find actors yourself, and don't wait for them to come to you. If you're just waiting for actors to come to you, you're really in the mercy of who decides to show up that day. There might be the perfect person out there in the community that's perfect for the role you're trying to cast, but maybe they have work during your audition process. Maybe they've never heard of your company. Maybe they've got other commitments that they're doing. If you really want to find the best person in the part, I really suggest, before you even get to the audition process, to go out and directly recruit people for your shows by going out and seeing other shows in the neighborhood, in your neighborhoods, in your community, in your theater community, and talking to those directors, talking to those artistic directors and production managers, and finding out what the track record of these actors is. Do they like working with them? One of the things I'll talk about in the audition process is how important looking really carefully at an actor's resume is, because you want to see that they have a track record of work, that they're dependable, that they'll show up, and that they'll work well with others. So get out there, see plays, and do some direct recruiting. Find those actors, and don't wait for them to come to you. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the actual audition process. So we kind of all know, or have been usually a part of an audition process that usually involves some sort of audition call that you put out to try to recruit. I apologize for my cough. To try to recruit, to bring actors into your audition. And then once you get them there, usually you'll do a set of monologues. Sometimes you'll have them do a cold reading. Sometimes you'll have them read from the script. Then often you'll do callbacks where you bring in specific actors you want to see it again, and then you'll post your acting your acting list who you've decided to cast, your cast list. Sometimes you'll add understudies. We kind of all know kind of the traditional audition process in some form or another. Again, this is going to be primarily up to your director, but as a production manager, you're responsible for finding out what your director wants and trying to make that happen. So I don't want to go through all that really in detail. I just want to give you 4 things that I think are really important in the audition process, and perhaps 4 things that you haven't thought of a lot. So the first thing is attending unified or group auditions. So very much in like I was talking about, going out and directly recruiting actors. In most communities in Austin, this is true. It's through the Austin Creative Alliance, who we talked about, holds once a year a unified audition. Basically what it is usually over a weekend. They will hold auditions, not for a particular show, but just for any of the actors in the area, in the town, over a 2 or 3 day period. So you could go there and see 200 people perhaps. And in the audience, they'll invite all the theater companies in town. And in that way, you as a director or a production manager are able to see a whole big group of actors. If you do an audition just for your show, you might get 10, 15, 20 people. At a unified audition, you're more likely to see 200 people. You could go to do something like that, and if you say you have 3 shows in your season, you could be looking to kind of cast all 3 shows, find people that you like, and invite them specifically back to your audition process for your particular show. Group auditions, a lot of universities do this as well at the first of the semester. They'll kind of have a big group call audition for people from all different shows can come see them. So you're trying to make less work for yourself, and seeing a lot of actors at once gives you a wider net. I mentioned this briefly, scheduling with your director. Ultimately, like I said, your director is going to decide what kind of audition process they want. As a production manager, a big part of your job is to facilitate their wants and needs, and also to really get them to explain really clearly what their audition process is and why that they're doing it that way. So you, as a production manager, can help them better schedule, facilitate, and make happen that audition process they want. The third thing is, this is a note primarily for directors, but I think it's really important to use your callbacks to figure out the chemistry between your teams. You may find the best actors for each character, but when you get those people in a room together, sometimes they just don't click. I think callbacks are important, and I think callbacks are way more important than that first day of just kind of getting a general feel of what talent is available. And again, I think if you're doing direct recruiting, if you're doing unified auditions, when you get to that kind of first day of just monologues and just seeing random people, if those aren't random people, but more specifically people that you really wanted to bring in, you can have a much more productive audition process by using those callbacks to really decipher and figure out the chemistry of these actors working together, and also figuring out which actors work best with your director, which ones communicate well, and also very important, which ones take direction well. And finally, the fourth thing I want to talk about, track records, reliability, and references. A lot of times we just kind of somebody will give us a headshot with a resume on the back, and we just kind of glance at it real quickly and then kind of set it aside and watch the audition. I want to say that looking at the resume of your performer, specifically if you haven't worked with them in the past, may be the most important thing that you can do, or one of the most important things. And the reason being is because you're looking for a track record of this person being able to work well with others. And another thing is you just want to see what kind of work that they've done, how professional they've done, and you want to know that they were reliable, that they're going to show up. That they're going to be off book when they need to. And one of the best ways to do this very quickly is when you look at a resume on the back of a photo, of a headshot. Look and see if that performer has done multiple shows with the same director or theater company. If that actor has done multiple shows with the same actor, with the same director and or the same theater company, that means that person has a track record of a number of shows of being reliable because they've been asked back again and again by the same company. It's a really great way, and that I always really quickly look at. I think it's a great way to see someone's track record, and it's something you can do in 2 seconds by looking at a resume. Very quickly, expectations of the actors. I think it's being very clear with the communication process at the beginning of the pre-production process. You want to make sure that your director is very clearly communicating what their wants and wishes and kind of guidelines are for your actors. Here, I couldn't put a generic list of expectations for the actors. I think that whenever you post your call list, your whoever's cast, your cast list, that you also post a list of expectations, and that you develop this list with your director, perhaps your artistic director, so that your actors have a really clear sense of what they're getting to. You and your director can always change, add to this list, but I really wanted to just give you a kind of a mock basic thing of some things you might think about putting on there. Expectations for the performer. Each director has their own rehearsal style. At the beginning, to alleviate confusion, you would put this list of basic expectations. So first here is it being on time, which is obviously important. When you're dealing with professional actors, they should show up early, 10 to 15 minutes early. When your director walks in the room, the actors should be ready to go. Make sure they're bringing their script and pencils, that they're bringing clothing that is appropriate for rehearsals, usually loose-fitting clothing that they can move in very comfortably, and also that they ensure proper hygiene. Especially if a big cast show, the last thing you want is one person coming in and being sick or having a cold, and suddenly that cold or sickness spreads throughout your entire cast. That happens a lot more than you would think, especially when you're dealing with big shows and big cast shows. As I record this, I'm flying to Phoenix tomorrow to work with a show that has a cast of 43 people. If anytime during that rehearsal process, one person comes and has something that's contagious, they could really wreck that entire show. So hygiene is important, and being prepared. And of course, you can add other things to this. One thing I always like is making sure that you have people scheduling conflicts, very concrete, that you know what the conflict, that there's a deadline that you're getting people's conflicts, and that there's a process by if you're running late or you have to miss a rehearsal or some emergency happens, that this is the call number, this is the person that you would contact. I think that's also important to put on this expectations of the actors list, but I would always post something similar to this along with your cast list after your audition process. All right. So now we're going to talk about technical deadlines, your tech meetings, and basically everything having to do with set, light, sound, costumes, audio, video, those kinds of things. Properties should be on here as well. So this is just a sample 12-week kind of rehearsal deadline. This is kind of assuming that you're having a 4 or 5 week process with the actors. And so you see that you're almost doubling your actual rehearsal time in your pre-planning stage that you're dealing with your design team. The reason you're doing that is those designs not only have to be created, but those things have to be built. Sets have to be built, lights have to be hung, costumes have to be stitched and fitted. These are all things that have to be done in the planning for really way ahead of time. So if you think about it and you're working on a new play, if you're adding that new play rehearsal process where you're adding readings and workshops, that could be a 12-week process just in and of itself. And then you have another 12-week process here that is your sets, lights, and design work. And then included in this would be like a 4 to 6 week. 4 is pretty general. 3 is getting really short. 6 is kind of on the long end when you're dealing with mid-size level theaters. If you're dealing with Broadway, bigger commercial theaters, you might have a much longer rehearsal process. But a typical medium-sized and regional rehearsal process is usually with actors about 4 weeks. And so this 12-week tech rehearsal schedule is kind of built in that. So the first thing you want to do is 12 weeks out here, 3 months, you're going to have your first big design meeting. This is really going to let your director take over, but all the design team members will kind of figure out over the next month or so what their schedule is going to be, when their deadlines are going to be. And that way, a lot of times, your design crew will do initial presentations at this very first meeting. It can be a very exciting time, the very first production meeting. Often a costume designer will bring in sketches. Sometimes a set designer will bring in a model. Lighting designers might bring in drawings of what they kind of want to do or what their ideas it lights. And in this way, the director is able to kind of direct information as to what he or she is thinking, what their kind of overall production plan is as far as the design elements. And then each one of these designers, even though their teams are going to be working independently mostly, at these design meetings, it's their chance to talk to one another and to collaborate with each other. Again, this is going to be run primarily by the director, but as a production manager, it's your job to organize and schedule these things so that your director's vision is met. Very often a playwright, if you're working on a new play, will be in these meetings as well. And at that time they can say, hey, this is where I am in the development of the script. I think that there's not going to be any more changes, that by this date the script is be done. On the other hand, the playwright say, hey, this is a new play, I'm still developing, and the script is going to be changing pretty rapidly. That's very important for your designers to know. It's really terrible, and as a playwright I've done it 100 times, but I should never do it. But excuse me, but you don't want to put your designers in a situation, for example, where you have them working for 2 weeks on a specific scene or a piece of set or lighting design elements, only for that to be cut from the script, which I've done a lot, but I shouldn't be doing it. So for your first month or so, you're just going to continue to have these design meetings. As a production manager, usually your stage manager, you're going to have take notes. Your primary job is just to organize and get your director what they want. 6 weeks out is kind of when your final design concepts are completed and all handed off to the director and to the people that are going to build them, and you kind of move from the design stage into the build stage. Here, 5 weeks out, you start with scenic build. Costume build will begin after you've got your actors and they've done their first fittings. Here I talk about scheduling measurement times or fitting times for costumes. And this is the time when your sound designers really start building their library of sounds from which they're going to create your sound design. If you're going to have original music, this is also the time that if you're going to do any studio time to record a band or a singer or anything, that would be in this kind of 4 to 5 week period out. At 4 weeks out, your lighting plot should be completed and handed off to both your director and your master electrician. Now your master electrician is going to schedule your lighting hang and when those lights are going to go up and how that's going to be built. 3 weeks out, here you should be kind of use your costumes. Now you had your initial measurements. Now you have your fittings of the actual costumes, so we can make sure that they fit our actors, and any tweaks or anything like that can be made. Here I have the rehearsal CD is handed to the stage manager. Sometimes it's not on a CD anymore. I use QLabs a lot now. It's all usually, instead of a CD, we use hard drives or flash drives to store data. CD just is a little outdated technology. 2 weeks out, so everything is kind of starting to get built, or kind of in the last stages of being built. At this point, and this you'll see 2 weeks out, it's going to be scheduled into when we get to our tech week kind of rehearsal. But you want all your designers there to really see the show, see where you are, get a good sense of how everything's starting to fit together. 9 days out, everything should kind of be built at this point. Just last minute adjustments for sounds and cue sheets should be built. All your programming should be starting to be done by this point. 8 days out, here your crew is going to watch the show with everything built, because now you're heading into tech week and now you're starting to tweak and make all those design elements happen. A week to 2 days out, this is really time for your designers to tweak everything. You're in your space now, the actors in their costumes. You're doing full runs, usually with full design elements in place and running. And this is the time to just make tweaks and changes. Even though it happens a lot, it's not the primary time to make big sweeping changes to any of your design elements. One day out, you should be done and ready to go. Very rarely do you allow your design team has the opportunity to, make changes once the show is run, but that doesn't mean they can't. If you have a 3 or 4 week run of a show, and after the first week you're having real issues with the lighting design or lighting cues or sound design or sound effects elements, there's no reason you can't go back and change those things. But ultimately, the schedule, and again, this is a sample schedule for your show, is going to be different. But I would highly recommend just, I don't even know if you could cut and paste this, but taking notes of this as just as a template. You could take this template, keep it for the rest of your play building career, and it's a really great tool to have. Even if you're doing a 4-week process or an 18-week process, you can use this template to kind of hit the big notes and make sure that the major elements are being taken care of. All right, so now we're going to talk just about that last week, about the tech rehearsal week. Sorry, I'm trying to cough in between slides. I hope that works. So tech week, brace yourselves. Tech week is coming. So here's a sample tech week schedule, just as the previous schedule that I just posted for the design build schedule. This is just a template. You can just use this. This is built on a show that opens on a Thursday, which is kind of normal, especially in Austin theater. And this is about a 9-day tech rehearsal period. One thing that I want to highlight is that you kind of always want to schedule in more time than you think you're going to need, because things can and do go wrong, especially when it comes to your tech stuff. When it comes to speaking of which, I had a little tech glitch there, so sorry, I'm kind of starting again a little bit. So what I was saying is that always make sure that you have extra time into your tech week schedule. Technical issues will always arise. There's things that you can't plan for, especially if you're dealing with complex video and audio and or lighting. Instruments break, things don't work. It takes longer for the electricians to hang the show than you have time for. All these different things can be built into this tech week schedule. It's always important to have everybody scheduled for those times, even if you don't use them. It's better to tell people they have the night off than try to bring people in. It's pretty much impossible during a tech week to bring in people for time that you don't have them scheduled for, all the way back 12 weeks out or 4 weeks out. So during your tech week time, always include extra buffer time, and you'll see that here in the schedule. So the very first thing, whether it's a Tuesday or just based on whenever your show runs, the first day would be, when we talked about this before, just having the whole crew, everybody just do a run. Usually it's a stumble through, meaning that the actors know that they still have time to work on the show. This is where we are. We finished our rehearsal process with the actors. And we're just going to run through the show. It's going to be glitches. We might start and stop, but we're going to try to get to the end so everybody gets a chance to see where we are just starting off. The first, second, the Wednesday and Thursday here, you'll have your lighting and projection, video, sound. You start introducing your technical elements. Friday afternoon's a great time to have a paper tech, which you'll do you'll just sit down with designers and work a cue to cue. You'll get your cue sheets with whoever's going to be running your board and your stage manager. Start making sure all your cues are built. And then after all your cues are built, then you can have that first technical rehearsal where you're going to be hitting cues and seeing how the lights work, seeing how the projections work, and how the sound works, and how does this all work with what's going on stage. You're going to do this 3 times. So you'll do one the next day, the second technical rehearsal, which I have on a Saturday morning. And here you'll see for the afternoon Evie, I have a backup tech rehearsal. So here's some of that buffer room that I was talking about. Sunday morning, the same thing. You'll have your final technical rehearsal, and then you'll have that buffer room on a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon to have that second rehearsal as well. And then you'll have your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Your 3 days leading up, you'll have 2 dress rehearsals where you're running the show from start to end with all your technical elements, and then your final dress, and then hopefully your very successful opening. Again, this is a template for a 9-10 day sample tech week. Tech week is hard. It's hard on everybody. It's a lot of work in a small amount of time. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, I've just kind of been through this process many times, is just to trust and have faith in the process. Usually that first Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, you're going to freak out and say, oh my God, we have so much to do and we are so far behind and we're never going to get to where we're going to be. And when that happens, say, hey, we're kind of in the exact right spot. It's kind of where we need to be. You know, all these different elements are coming together at the same time, and you got to figure out how to make them all fit and work together. So don't freak out. Just accept that that's a natural part of the rehearsal process, and trust your process, and trust that you have the schedule and that you're organized, and you are going to get to where you need to be by when you need to be there. So this is why it's important to have collaborators that you trust and people that you know that have a good track record of work. And that you have some extra time built in, some buffer time, so that you know if you need some last minute changes, those are built in. That is your sample tech week schedule. I'm going to talk really quickly about a sample photo and video call procedure. We'll talk about in our next lecture about marketing, about how important this is, but you want to really try to get good content of your show, particularly if you are planning on doing it again, if you're planning on selling it, if you're planning on taking it out on tour. And also, you know, your designers, your technicians and directors, your actors, they're all going to want really good photos and or video for their own portfolios, for their own records. You're going to want them for your company because you're going to want to be able to use photos and videos in your marketing campaigns. You want to be able to use these photos and videos to show your funders what you've done, and to use them on Facebook and social media to help bring people to the shows, and even perhaps to build a trailer if that's something that you're into. Getting a good video of the show so you can build a trailer is very important, I think, in this day and age, especially when so much of our marketing is done through the internet, and the internet is all about images. People want to see good photos, and people want to see good images, and people want to see good trailers about shows that they perhaps want to go see. So here's just, again, as with the other twos, this is just a sample. You can use this as a template. You can run your own photo call, video call, like however you want. But I think this is a good template to base it on. So like I said, the photo call allows designers, crew, and cast to use photographs for their production portfolios. This is primarily going to be run by the stage manager. Very often the director will use this time just to take a time off and have a break and get some coffee and rest their brain. And it's just important at the beginning to let everybody know that not everybody, photo calls, like wedding photos, right, can take a long time and be kind of annoying and frustrating. There's a lot of standing around. But the more cooperative and accommodating everybody is, particularly your performers, are during a photo call, the faster it's going to go for everybody, the better the shots everybody's going to get, and the faster that you can get everybody out the door. So the first thing you do is just want to prepare it. And just like if it was a wedding, you just want to get a shot list. So you want to talk to your director and designers about specific shots or moments that they want to taken. Then you're going to, oh, look, I have extra numbers on some of these. I apologize for that. I should clean that up. You want to prepare a list of 24, that's an estimate, 24, 24 pictures. I think that's a good number. You don't really want to get too many more of that because you're going to spend too much time really sorting through photos. And also you're going to end up ultimately with way more than that. It's good to have the cue line, page number, and light cue of the kind of moment you want. That enables whoever's running your board and your actors to quickly just jump your stage manager to say, all right, we're going to hit cue 7 on page 4. Okay, we're going to take photos for Q10 on page 11 or whatever. It makes things move faster if you just have this list. So prepare this list from the end of the production to the beginning, and post it backstage on the call board the day of the photo call. And they also, in this particular, they say that they want an overhead mic available. That's just really so the stage manager can be heard. And I would say the stage manager could actually sit in the seats with the, if they're loud enough, you don't necessarily need mics or speakers, but if you have a big cast, that may be something you want to consider. All right, so during the actual call itself, you want to remind the cast that they need to be in the pictures unless they're making a costume change so that they can hear the announcements about the pictures that are coming up next. To set up the picture to be taken and then announce next up is, or after that, on deck is this, so people know what's coming next, so they can prepare. This helps things move faster. And once the actors in place for that current picture, you can say freeze or hold. Then their photographers can nail all their pictures. And as the people are taking pictures without flashes, you want to have them do their pictures first. Usually, when they're all done with no flash, you can say, "All right, flashes." And then everybody with flashes can take their picture. And once those pictures are taken, you say relax, and then you jump to the next whatever's on deck. All right, next up, now we're to scene 3, Q7. Next up, and you just keep repeating this process over and over. Again, this is if all of these is just a sample, but I think a good sample of a way to run a photo call. All right, so we've talked about all these schedules, right? We've talked about the new play production schedule, auditioning, tech schedules, tech weeks, photo calls. We haven't really talked about rehearsal schedules. And I'm not really going to go too in depth on rehearsal schedules because the reason is, as a production manager, your job is to be the conduit for communication between the director and the designers and the cast. You're going to work really hard with the director to create a schedule that meets the needs of all artists involved. So your rehearsal schedule is really going to be up to your director, and your job is really to communicate that schedule of the director's wishes. A couple things here I want to highlight. One is we have a rehearsal schedule here for All Shook Up. And in really big letters, it says always, we will stick to the schedule as much as possible, but it is, of course, subject to change. That's very important to put into every schedule. Your rehearsal process may or may not change, but it's better to have people prepared for the possibility that it might. Second, I have this little note from, I thought it was cute, from the director's diary. To remember, rehearsals you need to include in your schedule that you may not have thought of. It's always important, I think, to remind the word directors, just like we did in our Tech Week schedule, we added a little buffer area there. I think it's always important to remind, I think a lot of times director kind of get this pie in the sky idea of how the rehearsal process is going to work. It's always great to add 2 or 3 days of just blank buffer time where that director can go in and work on that thing that they forgot that they needed extra time to work on, or maybe a particular scene wasn't working that they want to work again. It's really always great to have 2 or 3 days towards the end of the rehearsal process, or a 1 day per week during the rehearsal process, which just it's a buffer time, right, for the director that has a schedule rehearsal so they can get stuff that they want to work in that may not have thought of before in there. And finally, just a quick note of learning lines. Just as we put the expectations of the actors here, I think when you post the rehearsal schedule, you should make very clear to your playwright, first of all, the drop dead date, as I mentioned before, that date by which no changes are going to be made to the script. And then to your actors, let them know what your directions for their learning lines for being off book are. Lines and blocking should be memorized by the date specified in the rehearsal schedule, and always bring your skip to rehearsal even if after you've learned your lines, just in case there are any cuts, changes, things move around, extra cues, extra blocking. You want that actor to have that down on a piece of paper in their script. Again, you can take a picture of this and just post it whenever you do your rehearsal schedule. That these things about learning lines, getting the director some extra time, and to remember that to let everybody know that your schedule can and will change. All right, 45 minutes. That wasn't too bad. That was a lot of material. We went through it really fast. I apologize for a bit of a cough I had today. But I was trying to get through what I normally kind of teach in a 4-week rehearsal or a 4-week kind of process of classes into one 45-minute show. So Hope you enjoyed it. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I know I covered a lot of material very fast, and I really can get in depth, much more in depth about any of these things. Um, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys at the theater.